So let's talk about one of the most incredible and honestly just plain cool stories from World War II. It's the story of a small, scrappy group of American mercenaries who painted these terrifying shark teeth on their planes and completely changed the air war in Asia. This is the story of the Flying Tigers. Okay, so I want you to picture this. The date is December 20th, 1941. We're in Kunming, China, just 13 days after Pearl Harbor. And for the people living there, the war with Japan isn't 2 weeks old. No, it's been 4 long, brutal years. And for them, terror has a very specific sound, the drone of Japanese bombers flying completely unopposed. For years, this was just the brutal reality in China. The sky was uncontested. What did that mean? It meant that Japanese bombers could show up whenever they wanted, hit whatever city they wanted, and then just fly home. No resistance. China's own Air Force, which had tried to fight back, had been systematically wiped out. By the end of 1941, the skies over China belonged to Japan. Or, at least, that's what they thought. The contrast here is just staggering, right? While America is still reeling from the shock of Pearl Harbor, China has already been fighting this war for 4 years. Their situation was absolutely desperate. So when 10 Japanese bombers took off for Kunming on December 20th, the crews were expecting just another easy, routine mission. You have to understand, for the Japanese crews in those Kawasaki bombers, this was just another day of the office. You could call it a routine exercise in applied terror. They had absolutely no reason to think this time would be any different. I mean, why would it be? China had no Air Force left to speak of. The skies were empty. The flight was considered totally danger-free. But they didn't know that the ground beneath them was watching. And right here, this is where everything changes. Because while those Japanese bombers were droning along completely oblivious, a secret and incredibly deadly surprise was waiting for them on the ground. A predator was about to be born from a really unlikely alliance. This wasn't some official army. This was something else entirely. So who's the mastermind behind all this? A guy named Claire Chennault. And let me tell you, he was a total outcast. A brilliant hawk-faced tactician whose unconventional ideas about air combat got him basically kicked out of the US Army. But in China, he saw a chance. He spent years obsessively studying his enemy, and he became convinced he'd found their fatal flaw. They were rigid, they were predictable. And this is where his genius really shines. Chennault built this incredible early warning system that he called the spider net. It was a massive network of thousands of Chinese civilians, people with phones, radios, or sometimes just their own eyes, all watching the sky. So the moment those Japanese bombers took off from Hanoi, the net began to tremble, and the word started spreading from village to village all the way to Kunming. And who was waiting for that signal? The American Volunteer Group, or AVG. These were highly skilled American military pilots who had quietly resigned their commissions to go fight for China. They actually traveled to Asia disguised as tourists and artists. And get this, they were paid $600 a month, which was double or triple their US military pay, plus a $500 bonus for every Japanese plane they shot down. Let's be real here. Legally speaking, they weren't soldiers. They were mercenaries. Now, Chennault's plan wasn't just about getting an early warning. It was about the planes themselves. He knew his P-40s were heavy, rugged, and fast in a dive. But they were absolute bricks. They couldn't turn with the super nimble Japanese fighters. At the time, every Air Force was obsessed with the idea of the one-on-one turning dogfight. But Chennault knew that for his guys in their planes, that was suicide. So his whole strategy was simple. Don't play their game. He drilled this super simple but absolutely brutal doctrine into his pilots. Rule 1. Thanks to the spider net, you get above them. Rule 2. You use the P-40's weight and speed to dive down, fire one devastating blast with your heavy machine guns, and then Rule 3. You keep that dive going to get away and regain speed. And the most important rule of all, Rule 4. You never, ever get into a turning fight with a Japanese fighter. It was totally revolutionary, and it was about to be put to the ultimate test. So, here we go. December 20th, 1941. The stage is set. As those 10 Japanese bombers cruise toward Kunming, expecting another defenseless city, they are flying straight into a perfectly laid trap. This was going to be the first bite. For the first time in years, the sky over Kunming was about to fight back. Can you just imagine the sheer shock? The Japanese crews look up and see the sky, which for years had been empty in theirs, is suddenly full of these shark-faced monsters diving on them, seemingly out of nowhere. The formation just shatters. Bombs are dropped uselessly into the mountains as the pilots frantically turned for home. But it's way too late. And the result was immediate and absolutely decisive. The shark-faced P-40s just ripped through the bomber formation. They shot down or crippled 4 of them before the rest could escape. In one single fight, the myth of Japanese invincibility in the skies over China was completely shattered. So when the victorious pilots land, totally pumped up, they're met by Chunult. And what does he say to them? This. No celebration. No, great job, guys. Just an impossibly high standard. This was the mentality that made the Flying Tigers who they were. Good enough was never, ever good enough. In Kunming, that was just the warm-up act. Just 5 days later, on Christmas Day, the AVG faced an even bigger test over Rangoon, Burma. The Japanese came back with a massive force of nearly 100 planes, expecting to finish the job. And just look at these results. It is almost unbelievable. Only 12 American pilots took to the air to meet them. And when the smoke cleared, 28 Japanese planes were destroyed. The number of American pilots lost? 0. Nothing. This chart just shows the absolute tactical dominance they achieved. The Japanese formations were literally torn to pieces. So, as you can imagine, these stunning victories, against all odds, started building into something way bigger than just a few battles. This was the beginning of a legend, the legend of the Tiger. So let's look at how this small group of mercenaries became such a powerful symbol. And here's a crazy little detail. The pilots themselves had no idea they were called the Flying Tigers until they read about it in a magazine. The name just stuck. Then Walt Disney himself designed their famous winged tiger logo. And look at this. It took until 1991, nearly 50 years later, for the group to get an official presidential unit citation. I mean, these numbers, they just speak for themselves. In only 7 months of combat, the AVG fought in over 50 major engagements and never once suffered a tactical defeat. They were credited with destroying almost 300 Japanese aircraft, while losing only 14 of their own pilots in combat. The kill ratio was just astronomical. But you know what? You don't have to take my word for how effective they were. Maybe the most powerful testimony comes straight from the enemy. A top Japanese general later admitted that this tiny air force made up 60 to 75% of all the effective opposition his armies faced in China. He said, "Without the air force, we could have gone anywhere we wished." So what was it about that shark face? What did it really mean? Well, funny story, they didn't even invent it. The design was actually copied from British fighters in North Africa, who themselves had copied it from the German Luftwaffe. But in China, on those P-40s, it took on a whole new meaning. It became the face of American industrial might, the confident grin of a nation that could produce so many weapons it could afford to send them to the other side of the world to be flown by well-paid volunteers. The American Volunteer Group was officially broken up after only 7 months. But that shark face, it lived on. It's been painted on American fighter jets in every single conflict since, all the way up to today. So it kind of leaves you with this one big question, right? What does it mean when a symbol becomes so powerful that it completely outlasts the flesh and blood heroes who first gave it meaning? Maybe it's a testament to the power of pure ingenuity, showing its teeth when it matters the most.